quickly come to our speaker for the day, which is Dr. Neelam Sodhi. She's the founder, member, and director of Ashirwad, the North India Cerebral Palsy Association. She's a gynecologist by profession. She has been engaged in the work of creating possibilities for people with disabilities by the birth of her son, who has cerebral palsy. She has also been a past board member of the National Trust for Persons with Autism, Cerebral Palsy, Intellectual Disabilities, and Multiple Disabilities, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India. She's also a member of the Training Resource Group, RBSK, and Ministry of Health. Also an associate faculty at the Keystone Human Services in India. She's definitely a motivator and mentor to so many families, and especially special needs families across the country. We are so very excited and glad to have you here with us, Dr. Neelam.
Thank you, Swati. Thank you so much for that warm introduction. It really melts my heart to see such good things being said about me. Would you like to begin?
Totally deserve that. And without further ado, I would request you to take over so that we could get the session started.
Yes. So let me share my screen. Just bear with me. Can you see my screen, Swati?
Yes, Dr. Neelam, I can.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. And it's so nice to be here with all of you, going to be talking about puberty. And as a parent, I have done this journey myself. So let's see what we are going to be learning together and how we can help our children and young adults with special needs navigate the puberty journey. So we all know puberty is a key moment in human development. Each adult present in this webinar has gone through this phase. Let's refresh some of the experiences of puberty before we talk about what can be possible differences for youth with special needs as they traverse this period, and some strategies which will help parents and professionals help them traverse this journey. Adolescence is defined as the transition from childhood to adulthood. It is a period which demands significant adjustment to the physical and psychosocial changes which distinguish childhood behavior from adult behavior. And what are these changes? It is considered to start with the onset of puberty. Puberty is defined as that time in the life when a boy or a girl becomes sexually mature. So it is a process that usually happens between ages 10 and 14 for girls and 12 and 16 for boys. So this period is marked not only by physical growth, but also by overlapping cognitive, psychosocial, and emotional development. What is cognitive development? We hear so much about cognitive, psychosocial. So what are these words? Cognitive development is the progression of thinking from the way a child does to the way an adult thinks. Psychosocial is the interrelation of social factors and individual thought and behavior. And because this is a time of rapid physical development and deep emotional changes, which can be really very exciting, but they can also be confusing and uncomfortable period for both the child and the parent. Let me tell you the few key milestones of adolescent development. The key milestones of this period, moving from childhood to adulthood, are attaining an adult body capable of reproducing, which means the sexual maturity also, having and maintaining intimate relationships, which falls into the psychosocial domain, managing a range of complex emotions, and most importantly, independent thinking and problem solving. The visible signs of puberty are the secondary sexual characteristics. This is what marks for parents and professionals, not so much for the children, but for the parents and professionals, the development of these secondary sexual characters is that mark which says now this child is entering into puberty, be it a boy or a girl. So for boys, the visible signs of puberty, the secondary sexual characters, are growth of pubic hair as well as increase in the size of testicles and penis. Muscles develop for boys, their voice changes to a deeper one. They can have oily skin with pimples breaking out on their faces. And another thing, which is a very significant development in this phase, is erections as well as wet dreams. For the girls, the secondary sexual characters are the development of hair in their private parts, the pubic area, as well as in the armpit, and the breast development. The sequence is thelarchy. Thelarchy is breast development. Then comes adrenarchy, which is sexual hair in pubic and axillary area, and then comes menstruation. What else happens at this time for girls? There is a change in their body outline. This is because of increased body fat, widening of hips, which gives the girl their typical curves. They can also have pimples at this time. In both boys and girls, there is rapid physical growth. Because the speed of these changes, the physical development varies so widely among teenagers, puberty can be a source of both pride as well as embarrassment. This growth spurt is very important, and it is something very important for parents also to remember at this stage, because everybody has a genetic potential in their height. Just like we are born with eyes or facial features which are due to the genes we have inherited from our parents, similarly the height potential, there is a genetic potential to how much height an individual is going to achieve. But at this time, if there is not sufficient physical activity, sometimes that genetic potential is not achieved. So it is very important for everyone to remember that you have to probably motivate the youngsters into physical activity, because sometimes children at this age, teenagers, get so lazy because of the rapid changes that are happening in their body. They get lazy, and you might find them very lethargic and totally not into exercising or physical activity. And so this is a very important point to remember. In boys, the weight gain is more in terms of muscles. In girls, the weight gain is more in terms of fat. Now, because there is so much difference in the speed of development from one individual to another, adolescents can become very concerned about their appearance, especially if the changes that have happened in their body are earlier or later than in their peers. Now we come to the psychosocial changes which happen during puberty. Remember, this time I'm talking about the normal developmental changes which happen in everybody's life. So there is no typical, there is no special needs. Everybody goes through adolescence, and everybody has these changes during puberty. An adolescent has 4 main tasks to accomplish to become a well-adjusted adult. These tasks are characterized as development of identity, adaptation to a new body image, peer relationships, and independence. What is personal identity? Self-identity is the way we see ourselves. What is my place in this world? What am I doing? Who am I? And this personal identity or self-identity, it changes in response to the influences from the peer group, from family, from school, among other social environments. Social identity is how others see you. And a positive self-identity is very, very significantly correlated with a positive self-esteem. If you see yourself as someone who is good, impressive, and if the world also sees you like that, your self-esteem goes up many notches. The way the world sees us is also very much dependent on what are the social roles that any individual is visualized in, and how much these social roles affect that self-esteem of that individual, you can just imagine. The next is the adaptation to a new body image. Now, since the body undergoes many, many changes, physically as well as those emotions inside of you, it is common to feel uncomfortable about them and become overly sensitive about physical appearance. As a result, adolescents may feel irritated quite easily. They may tend to lose their temper. You might see that they are depressed, they are emotional, more of crying is often seen. But remember, not everybody goes through this period in the same way. There will be individual variations always. The next very important milestone in the pubertal age group is the development of sexuality. It is a very clear biopsychosocial development arena. And during adolescence, an individual's thought, perception, as well as their response gets colored sexually. So you find that adolescents are now having these sensations of attraction as well as infatuation. There is sexual arousal, which is seen more often in boys as night emissions and wet dreams. Also, because these changes in the adolescence, physically they are developing very fast. Physically, their body might appear to be very close to an adult, but they lack the capability of thinking and acting like an adult, and that is why they also tend to engage in exploratory behavior and sensation seeking and often risk taking. The other important changes that happen is that at this time there is an establishment of a system of values within that individual themselves. They may feel that their values do not match that of the family. They may also want to be more independent from their parent and desire more personal independence. They give greater importance to peer relationships also, and sometimes these peer relationships might not be of very good quality. It is at this time that there is emergence of skills and coping strategies to overcome problems and crises. So these are some of the psychosocial changes among a whole host of changes that happen during puberty. Teenagers with disabilities and special healthcare needs also have the same body changes. They have the same growth spurt, emotional, psychosocial changes. They also feel love and attraction and sexual desires as other people. So it might be difficult to have these conversations, which we are going to be talking about in the upcoming slides, but it is very important. And we also, as parents and professionals who are working with children or teenagers with special needs, we need to remember that their development is in no way different from anyone else. So what are the concerns of the adolescents? They are also as involved in their body image, the way they see themselves, as anyone else. So a youngster with special needs to have that same social acceptance, the independence and demand for love and respect from the family as well as from people around him. He also tends to have that same desire for self-respect, the desire for success, the desire for a strong and beautiful body. And in the case of lack of meeting of these needs, or it is the failure of the adolescent to adapt to those changes that are happening in their body, these may cause emergence of negative behavior. So sexuality is something which might be very disturbing to the individual at that time. They may not understand what is happening to their body unless somebody explains to them that this phase is very natural. There is nothing to get worried about. Everybody goes through this. Your mom and dad also went through it, and that this is how you're going to be dealing with them. They may also be concerned, girls may also be concerned as to how menstruation will affect their lives, how it will affect their independence. Would they be dependent on their parents always for personal care and hygiene? Both boys and girls, as they grow older, may be concerned depending on their physical abilities upon whether they would be dependent on a potential partner for their personal care. And for parents, there might be a host of other concerns. In most cultures, however, the traditional approach is to acknowledge that they are no longer children. Yes, we say that they are growing up, but then we also, parents or so many people in different cultures tend to assume that teenagers with disabilities will never be accepted, or they will never be able to function as adults. So they tend to keep them in that mental childhood. So physically, they acknowledge that the child is growing. Physically, they acknowledge that the child is soon going to be an adult. And internally, they know that these are the issues which are going to arise. But sometimes parents probably do not want to face these issues, and therefore, they do not want to acknowledge that all these concerns can be happening for the child. So the parents may be concerned, especially in case of their daughters, on menstrual problems or maintaining of hygiene, simply changing of pads, or menstrual issues like heavy bleeding, frequent menstruation, irregular cycles. Parents might, I've seen so many parents actually think of it as a burden. They do not want that menstruation should happen. It's so much easier that if this did not happen in the lives of my daughter. They may also be concerned also because they know that this is a time when social life, social friends are a very happening thing in the life of others, and they know that it is very important for their child also to have friends. So friends and social life, the absence of friends and social life might be a concern. Will my child ever be able to earn or become an entrepreneur or become economically independent? Will my child ever go into a relationship? Does that even exist? Does that possibility even exist for my child, as to have a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a husband or a wife? Will he or she be actually able to have babies? What about the lifespan? What about the other health issues which are so common in people with disabilities? On the other side, we also need to remember that having an individual with disabilities can have an overall negative impact even on the parent's psychological well-being and family functioning. We all know of so many examples where families have just broken up and not being together because of these stresses. And because they often fill the role of primary caregivers, the mothers are especially vulnerable to unique types of parenting stress at this time. So now we move into what should we be doing as practical preparations for adolescence. So let's talk about why is it really important for children with special needs to have even the knowledge about their bodies and their sexuality. You're not going to brush it under the carpet. It's an issue which is going to come into their lives, and we need to be prepared for this. And it's very important for them to get the correct information, and because otherwise they are going to be exposed to social media. Willy-nilly, there is the mobile which is handed to them, and so many times parents know my child is very smart. She can access all the functions of the mobile, but that child is also accessing a lot on the internet, maybe on the YouTube, maybe other sources, WhatsApp and all, because they have a natural curiosity, but the knowledge might not be proper. It is very important for them to be prepared beforehand, which gives them adequate time for knowledge acquisition as well as practice. They could be frightened that something is wrong with them or that they are hurt, especially when the menstrual bleeding starts or nightfall happens. You also want them to be independently able to handle their growing up issues. They need to know this as a safeguard against sexual abuse, cyberbullying, cybercrime. And they also need to be able to communicate with you correctly about any sexual abuse, about any discomfort, about any health issue, about any problem that they are facing. Anticipatory guidance is the word. The child's body is going through those developmental changes. They may not know why, but we as parents and professionals know what is happening. Do not let them go into adolescence unprepared for that. Now, when we say that go unprepared, the mindset usually is, will they understand? Or we tend to assume they won't understand. But why don't we think that they will understand? It may just take them more time to comprehend and put this into practice. So let's prepare. So when is it the correct time to talk about it? Well, it's never too early. It's never too late. You can start talking about it by teaching them body parts when you're giving them their daily bath. And even if the child has already started menstruation or has started having night falls or has started showing attraction in the opposite gender, well, it's not too late to talk about it. Not talking about it won't make it go away. When we look beyond the behaviors to the communicative intent of our children, we see so many questions and concerns like, what's happening to me? Why do I feel like this? Where did I come from? Am I normal? Does everybody have this? Well, that is the trigger. That is when you could talk about it. How to talk about it? Any appropriate situation, but do it in a way that is easily understood. And who is going to talk about it? Ideally, it has to be a person who that child is going to trust and who can give the correct information. Now, one tip that I would like to give here is that parents, please discuss among yourself much before the child is 9 or 10 and you know that that adolescent age is going to happen. So you need to prepare them you need to start preparing them then. Well, if mothers are more comfortable talking to girls, then let that be their role. If fathers are more comfortable talking to boys, let that be their role. But please, it should not stop the mother talking to the son or the father talking to the daughter about their sexual development. Children have a natural curiosity about their bodies, about expressions of affection, about relationships. So it is up to the parents and professionals to give them the correct information. And how do they do this and how do they get this correct information? The parents and the educators' personal knowledge about these topics and their personal attitudes towards sexuality are big influencers. The parenting style, the peer relationship, the cultural influences are the important social factors which facilitate the sexual learning and decides the sexual attitude and even the sexual behavior of the adolescent. Sex education is not bad parenting. It is in fact good parent. And please be hopeful of the future reproductive life of your child, because then you will give them the necessary support that they need as and when they need it. So what is a part of sex education? The body parts, the correct name for the body parts. Do not use phrases. Do not use ambiguous words. Use the correct body parts. What are the puberty changes? What is menstruation? What is masturbation? What are night emissions? Their curiosity and fantasy about sex needs to be specified, and if there are any other particular specific sexual issues which come up, they need to be addressed. They also need to be taught what is pleasure and affection and what are the correct and maybe not so correct ways of expressing pleasure and affection. So it should be in a manner which is appropriate to the apparent ages, which means that you need to probably discourage inappropriate displays of affection like hugging strangers. This is also going to be something which is going to be protective for them against sexual abuse. They also need to be taught the social rules. What is public? What is private? They also need to be taught personal boundaries. Who can touch them? Where and who cannot touch them? Where can they not be touched? What is good touch? What is bad touch? They also need to be taught that they can say no to be touched at any time. So please, parents, don't get into the habit of saying, oh, please give auntie a hug, or please give uncle a hug. No, that is not needed. If we want our children to be taught the correct thing, and if we are concerned that they need to know how to do things, then well, please give them the right to refuse to be touched at any time. And also emphasize that there should be no secrets from parents, despite whatever any friend, any sister, any uncle, any auntie is saying. This is a secret between you and me, but no, there are no secrets to be kept between parents and the child, or the person who they trust, the professional and the child. So what else do we need to teach in this period of puberty so as to increase the self-esteem in children with disabilities? Give them exposure to a lot of different social situations, because social development is largely experiential. You cannot put them in a room and teach them how to communicate with people. We also need to lay good stress on their clothing. Remember, they want to wear absolutely the same type of dresses which their sibling or other friends or people outside or around them are wearing. So it is not just that because this is a child with special needs, they can be just clothed in dowdy, non-fashionable stuff. Grooming is again very important. Taking care of their health, taking care of their hair, the way they look, the hygiene, the cleanliness, the odors, which so many people say that people with special needs have, especially when they are growing older. Everybody sweats, but to learn how to take care of that, that is probably an important skill. And something that is very, very important is independence in basic self-care tasks. This is a critical component of this journey to adulthood. So parents, stop doing everything for your child. Your child can do it. Give them the opportunity to do it. Train them to do it, and glory in the fact that they have become independent. There are also certain very important issues which need addressing, and that is developing of more complex social skills and socially appropriate behaviors. Issues of personal space. Parents can also say, this is mine. You are not walking into the room anytime you want to. And similarly, respect the personal space for the child. Teach them self-advocacy skills, talking for themselves, even sometimes where they need to be defending themselves against bullying or against outward inappropriate behavior or rude behavior from professionals or other people sometimes. Well, they need to have those self-advocacy skills. Telephone and computer skills, so very important. And socialization, again, I'm going to emphasize, is very, very important to develop these skills. So parents and professionals need to provide adequate opportunities for social interactions and to practice their skills in actual settings. How to teach? Through social stories, books, flashcards, by giving frequent cues, by supervision, by formalized instruction, by using adaptive technology. But the idea is teach and reinforce, teach and reinforce. Do it in a stepwise manner from basic to complex tasks. Set clear rules, and this clear rules means that you give pre-teens and teenagers responsibility and build their decision-making skills. Setting clear rules also means that all family members are following those rules. So it is also noted that whereas typically developing children complete those self-care tasks independently by 8 years of age, children with disabilities may need more time. Consistent behavior and application of rules by all family members is also a bottom line. Reinforcement, reinforcement, reinforcement of these activities well into adolescence and sometimes also into adulthood is important to achieve and maintain success. So parents and professionals, give the facts, irrespective of your personal beliefs and values. Give the facts. If it is important, then train yourself. Orient yourself to what is correct. Let go of your prejudices. This is the new generation we are talking about. And as parents, it is our duty to give them the best and the correctest. Leave the door open for further communication. Don't shut the door to questions. Leave it open for whatever communication at whatever time they want it, encouraging the children to talk and making time to listen when your child needs to talk. I'm going to end my presentation with this last slide. Optimism is the faith that leads to achievement. Nothing can be done without hope and confidence. A person who we all respect, Helen Keller, said that. And so parents and professionals, you need to have optimism. You need to have belief in the children, the teenagers who you are working with. And without this hope, and without confidence in their abilities, and without confidence in your own parenting and abilities to guide that child through this phase, puberty can become complicated, but that is not what we want. We want puberty to be an easy passage into adulthood. Thank you so much, everyone, for your patient listening. Shall I stop?
Thank you so much, Dr. Neelam. That was such an insightful session. And yeah, reinforcement is the key. Reinforcement is the way. I think so. That is the key message that all our listeners from here should take from this webinar. Before I get started with the Q&A segment, I would like to remind the audience that if you wish to enroll for the certificate training program on managing special needs in the mainstream schools, you could find the link in the chat box being shared right now. You could also share this link with your friends and other members of school heads or other friends, colleagues. If they wish to enroll, they can either register using the link or write to us at support@ability.com if they wish to make this program being followed for their individual schools. Also, if you wish to register for the next webinar on how to teach online the children with special needs, you can use this link being shared. And if you wish to register for the next workshop by Margarita Gendelman on visual perceptual skills and development of motor skills, you can find the link being shared in the chat box. So yeah, that was something that I was supposed to inform you all before we start asking the questions that we have received from so many different people from around the world, Dr. Neelam. So I would quickly jump on to questions because we have very limited time. The first question says, I have an 11.5-year-old Down syndrome child who complains of pain in the vagina or an on and off and speaks about it being very itchy. The question that they want to ask is I'm sorry, I am facing some difficulty in the network. Yeah, the question that they want to ask is, how do I make the child understand and apply that the child should not itch her private part in public space and also not talk about it very frequently. The parent has already tried and explained to her many times, and the child understands what can be done in public and private, but still she does it.
So we've had some answers from the talk that here is a parent who is preparing her daughter very well, explain private and public behaviors, but the idea is reinforced. Now, Swati, this just brings to my mind two things. One, I would suggest to the mother, take the daughter to the gynecologist. There has to be some reason for that itching. So maybe if you have the itching go away, she is not going to itch, whether it be private or public, and you might just be free of this issue. Second thing that I want to say is, so we are not here fixing this individual. We are actually changing the environment for her. Also remember, I think I'm just laughing while I'm saying is, how many times have I seen adults itch themselves on their private parts, the vagina, men or female, and we find it very irritating. But yes, there is a need for public in general to know about public and private behavior. My suggestion, if you're just feeling that it is because your child has Down syndrome and mummy, you are probably a little more conscious about that, well, do not transfer your anxiety to your daughter. A lot of people do it, not an acceptable behavior, I'm not saying that, but a lot of people do it. So just keep reinforcing, visit the gynecologist, see if you can take away the reason for why she's itching. And if you want to get in touch with me, then you can get my number from Ability and I can do a teleconsultation for you. Sure. Yes, Swati.
Okay, that is interesting, Dr. Neelam. The next one that I have is from Rommel, who's watching us live on Zoom. The question is, what is the right time to teach about sex education or good touch and bad touch or any such things to children with special needs? Do we have to count the mental age or the birth age will do?
If you're counting the mental age, then maybe the IQ, so many times the IQ is what rules our thinking. The IQ is a piece of paper which just sort of gives you a number so that it can assist in probably delivery of services. But the IQ is not the individual. So you're not going by the mental age. You're going by the physical age, the chronological age that person is. The second thing to remember is here that this is what happens when we feel they will not be able to understand. Well, they can understand. If you ask your child, if I were to ask any parent about their child, let me give you an example of somebody who visited me yesterday, and she was talking about her child as having this problem, and her IQ is 63, her IQ is 63. But yes, she was saying, my daughter is very creative, my daughter can handle the mobile very well. I just often wonder, why does the IQ not relate to the functional abilities of the child apart from education? So please believe in the chronological age, when to start talking about it. Well, I know that in mainstream schools, I have delivered talks to children of class 2 and class 1 also on good touch and bad touch. So you want to tell your child right from that time what is good touch and bad touch. And how do we do that? By the swimsuit rule. It is so easy. Just go online and check swimsuit rule, and you need to tell your children the part that is covered by the swimsuit. Get a swimsuit, put the child into it, and explain to the child the part that is covered by the swimsuit is the part no one can touch you at.
That's a fantastic strategy, Dr. Neelam. I would definitely go and look for the swimsuit rule, and so will others. The next question that we have is how to understand the sexual desires and emotions of teens, especially in case of children with special needs who are not that expressive or find difficulty in expressing themselves. In this case, how can parents understand the sexual desires or emotions? Are there any signs in particular? And if there are, how can parents handle the same?
So, primarily, we all know that our children are going to enter into puberty, the ages that I said. So the ages, you remember that once the child is 10, well, that puberty is about to begin. So you become mentally prepared that this phase is going to come. Second thing is, the secondary sexual characters are the external appearances of the gateway to puberty. So when the boys start developing some hair on their face, or their penis and testicle size increases, the girls start developing breast buds and hair on their pubic and axillary areas. This is the time when you know that the child has entered into puberty. Now, in this time, that child is going to exhibit certain behaviors which are related to the sexuality of that child. So, like in boys, night falls, wet dreams. They might not even be conscious of it. And I know of one young man, one parent who told me that her son, who was 13 years old, came very scared one morning and said, "Mom, I have wetted my bed. I never do that." And it took the mother a minute to understand that he's not talking about passing urine in the bed, but that he has had a nightfall or a wet dream. So these are the ways. And then tiny things, tiny indicators, maybe just developing more of an interest in self, in grooming, standing more in front of the mirror. How do I look? This is the way. Those are indicators that the child is moving towards puberty. Maybe just looking at the opposite gender. This happens more with boys because they have a larger sex area in their brains. So do, as psychologists say. So maybe in boys, maybe looking at girls or glancing at them interestingly, or being very curious about the different body parts, those could be signs as parents that your child is entering. Or maybe certain questions that they ask. Why is my body like this? Why am I growing? Why is my penis growing? Or why do I feel like this? So those could be the indicators.
Sure. Interesting. I'm quickly jumping on to the next few questions because I want to cover as many as we can. The next one is, some children get too conscious during menstruation. How to make such children settle or calm down, or how to teach them personal hygiene for that matter, if you have something to add to that. And I would also like to add an extension question, which says, how can we ease the stress and fears of children during puberty, especially at times like these?
So, how did I teach my daughter? I started teaching my daughter about possible changes in her body and the upcoming changes that are going to happen in her life at a period much before that was actually going to happen. And my way of teaching with adolescents who come to my clinic is, I tell them that just like you in your body, in the lower part of your body, you have these two openings where you are passing urine every day, you're passing stool every day, and in between them there is another opening which, as you grow up, you might someday pass blood out of. So give the information beforehand. Don't make it complicated. It is as simple as that. According to the age that they are, according to the understanding that they would have. Like when I do adolescent education programs in schools, I know that girls of class 6 who have not started menstruating might not actually understand if I'm talking about the uterus. So I say, okay, do you know you have lungs? Do you know you have a food pipe? Similarly, you have something in your body which is called the uterus. And at some time, in some later time in your life, this is what is going to happen, and you might have some blood coming out of your body. Don't be scared. It's just you moving into becoming a big girl. And what are the advantages of becoming a big girl? And you sort of make it fun, you make it interesting. Okay, this is the transition that is going to happen. And similarly for boys is how you start preparing them also to make that transition, that okay, there might be a time when you might just feel that your penis is standing up. Don't be scared. That is just a part of your body changes. Or you might have something happening at night. So it is like, it'll just be a part of body changes. And similarly for hygiene, but what I personally feel is the parents need to know it themselves. When I do these adolescent education programs, so many times we have parents invited into the session, and believe me, Swati, it surprises me how adults in their 30s also, late 30s, almost going 40s, they do not know why they menstruate. It is this lack of knowledge that parents have. Fathers do not know why the changes happen in their body, why all that process of sexuality happens, are they triggered by the thoughts of when they see an opposite gender or whatever, and it triggers the thoughts of sexuality. Parents need to know about their own bodies. Parents need to be comfortable with the idea, and I'm sure that we can all teach our children. We know, don't we teach them how to keep the house clean? Don't we teach them that when they are passing urine, how they need to keep themselves clean, or when they have motion, how do they clean themselves? Well, this is just like that. It's not rocket science.
Okay. Everything can be taught the moment parents become comfortable talking about it. Great. The next question that we have is, sometimes what happens, Dr. Neelam, is that children with special needs tend to showcase inappropriate behavior towards other children while they are developing these sexual desires, or during this puberty stage. In that case, what would be your advice to educators or parents who are witnessing such behavior?
Again, it's just so natural, isn't it, Swati? If I were to ask every adult, everybody who has passed through puberty, to just look into their past and remember, didn't they feel those attractions towards any boy or towards any girl? There was something like kuch kuch hota hai, maybe some, moments of palpitations happening. Well, it's natural. Everybody passes through that. Most people have these feelings. So similarly, it is going to be for these children with special needs. So a big thing is how you accept this and how you deal with it. So whether it is in the house or whether it is in the professional organization, your own attitudes. If you're going to say, "Oh, ऐसे थोड़ा ही होता है," I mean, this is wrong, then, well, you are going to start talking about it in a bad manner. You might punish them. You might say this is bad, and then those thoughts get fixed into their mind that this is wrong, this is sinful, you're not supposed to do it. Don't do that. Make it natural. And what is important for them to be explained is, how many people do you really see? And I think this is something which is very if you're talking about an Indian culture, how many people do we really see in India exhibiting affections and sexual behavior externally in public? We don't. So maybe just give that as an example. But in cultures where this is accepted as normal, maybe this question also probably would not arise. So the thing is to not medicalize, not to criminalize the behavior, but to accept that this is what can happen. sit and explain. Do it in a personal session, in a one-to-one session. Do not make the individual feel that it is what they have done is so sinful and they're going to get punishment from God or punishment from their parents. Just explain that this is not something you're going to be doing. Focus on your study, focus on your work. That's a friend that you have. It's okay to say hello, okay to shake hands, but you are not to do this. And remember that we need to start this at a very early stage. This is the first impressions matter. It is the first time that this happened. Maybe that was the time when the parent could have said that, no, it's not okay to go and kiss uncle, or maybe it's not okay to go and kiss that friend. That might have been that very first step which we needed to have taken.
Right, sure. Okay, moving on to the next question. This question has been asked by a couple of participants, but I'm raising one particular case so that you could address all the similar questions. The question says, I have a functional autism spectrum student who's 15 years old in my school. Very often he arrives at school having a need to release himself, and he will go to his calming corner to do that. The class teacher is a young lady and is definitely at loss as to how to handle this situation. The child does not disturb the girls and he does it quietly, but sometimes he will put his hand on his groin inappropriately. So how do I handle this situation is the question. And also if you could share some strategies, because there are many related questions to this particular case example that has been shared. If you could share some strategies on how to orient children with special needs about the appropriate process of masturbation, or if you have some tips.
Whoa, the appropriate process of masturbation in a webinar. Okay, addressing your first question first is that my question again, Swati, to everybody. Why do we want to fix the individual? Why can't we fix the environment? Why is the individual at fault? Why can't certain changes be made, accommodations be made to the environment where he can do what is something very important for him? Now, here is an individual who you have already probably told many times what is public, what is private. It is very obvious from his behavior, from the question, that this young person has this sensory need to release himself, and he knows this is the place I go to, the calming corner. My question is, why can't that calming corner be in a separate room in the organization where he is going to study? Why does he have to go to the classroom? Why can't a bathroom, a washroom, make it accessible, make it comfortable? Or even better, why can't there be a separate room? You might be addressing the needs of maybe more young people with disabilities. If you do that this is a place you can go to if you have the urge to release yourself. If you have the sexual desire where you need to masturbate, then this is the place you go to. In the house also, don't we do that? Training young children that you're not supposed to do it in the sitting room or in the lounge. If you feel the need to do it, go to the bedroom or the washroom, whatever is available in the house, close the door, and then you do it. And remember that after that, you need to clean yourself and wipe yourself, that is, maintain hygiene, put on your clothes properly, and then come out. So something similar, a situation similar like this can be created within the organization, a separate room. Tips about how to masturbate. Well, this is something which is amply available on the internet, and I'm pretty sure whoever have asked the question will be able to find a guide. Again, remember, this is something very psychological, very basic. So it is not something which necessarily needs to be taught. And if you just guide them as to what is the correct place to do it, and also this, like I said, the hygiene needs to be taken care of, and plus where to do it, I think that should do the trick.
Thank you, Dr. Neelam. That was very insightful. Since we're running short of time, I would take one last question for today. So the question says, how do we handle a child who we think is having some sort of sexual desires towards the therapist who is taking the therapy sessions? How should the therapist handle it in this particular case?
Now, since we don't really know what the needs of this child are, as in terms of the disability and what is the intellectual understanding, I would say that how many times have teachers in school faced this situation from the teenagers in their classroom? We've seen it in movies also amply enough. So sometimes there might be triggers. There might be triggers to that behavior, as in how that individual is speaking, how that individual is probably communicating with this young person, or maybe sometimes the mode of dress also. So those are certain things which you probably can take care of. If the situation gets very extreme and you're not able to explain to the individual, because like it is, this is the only way you deal with it, that you explain that it is not, this is not something that I like, just like you don't like being touched in this place, or you don't like being stared at, so I also don't like this behavior coming from you. That communication can be open, can be respectful, and can be reinforced also. Worst come worst, you might just have to separate the two.
Beautiful session, Dr. Neelam. Thank you so much. It was such a delightful experience to have you here and to talk about such important issues in such great detail and with such great comfort, so that you made all the audience members also very comfortable. And I am pretty sure they're taking a lot of valuable insights and learnings from today's session. So thank you so much for giving them the experience today that you did. Before
Thank you,
I
Swati.
before I
Thank you,
end
Team
the
Ability.
session, thank you, Dr. Neelam. Before I end the session, I would like to remind you all that if you wish to register for the upcoming workshops or webinars, the link is being shared. Also, if you wish to register for the certificate program, we are sharing the link with you in the chat box, and the certificate program could be availed by registering for it. The workshops under the program would remain free until 31st of July 2022. And do not forget to share your feedback, because that will help us to improve the experience further for you all. And yes, over to you, Dr. Neelam. How was your experience conducting today's session? How was it for you? Some concluding words.
Very amazing, because this is such a topic, and well, yes, it has to be delivered very sensitively, but you can't keep things under wraps. I just wanted to say that there's so many comments coming, but I just happened to look at one, and whoever it was has written this, has written a thank you, and then has written relaxed. I think that for me sums up the success of what I have done today. The immense satisfaction that I am feeling from that one person saying relaxed means probably there was stress, and that has gone away, and they might be able to help whoever is in their life in a better way. Well, for me, it has been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you once again, Dr. Neelam, for giving your precious time and sharing such very useful information. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for today's session. Stay posted about the updates from Ability. Keep an eye on your inbox or follow our pages, and we will come back with another session very soon for you all. Thank you so much.